Chase T-boned the trailer and his airbags deployed in the impact. His car was totaled after first responders had to use the jaws of life to extricate him from the vehicle. Even with this dashcam footage clearly showing that the pickup driver ran a red light, it still took over 6 months for his insurance provider to accept responsibility. Even so, Chase is grateful he had footage proving that the other guy had been the one to run the red light. He told us, "I would recommend anybody driving to get a dashcam." We couldn't agree more. Kai was driving down a California highway at 4 a.m. Suddenly, even though he was driving over 70 miles per hour, a car flew up behind him and smashed into his car. A responding officer told Kai that he believes the other driver had been traveling at over 100 miles per hour at the moment of impact. He also said he smelled a strong scent of alcohol and proceeded to subject the other driver to a sobriety test. Kai doesn't know what the results of the test were, but he does know the other driver was arrested and taken away in handcuffs. Thankfully, the other driver's insurance provider paid to replace Kai's totaled vehicle. Alexander was heading to his parents' house in his pickup truck to help them move. When a van driver brake checked him, he swerved to avoid it before speeding up to beat a yellow light. An oncoming driver in the turn lane didn't see Alexander and turned, T-boning his pickup and sending it into a light pole before rolling over. His truck was totaled in the impact. The other driver was found to be at fault, and his insurance provider paid for Alexander's truck. The accident was so severe that it was even covered by the local news.
One man was taken to the hospital after a crash at 52nd Avenue South and 45th Street South in Fargo. Officers on the scene tell us the pickup was struck by the car at the intersection. They describe the pickup driver's injuries as non-life-threatening despite the massive damage to the vehicle, and they say the driver of the car was not hurt.
However, traffic was slowed for more than an hour as crews worked to get that pickup onto another truck.
This submitter's father is a truck driver in Germany. He was driving down the Autobahn when the box truck in front of him came to a sudden stop without warning. Our submitter's father hadn't left himself enough stopping distance and rear-ended the box truck. His truck was full of cargo at the time. Paramedics responded and he was taken to a hospital for medical treatment. Sadly, the semi-truck was totaled. The driver of the box truck wasn't injured, and our submitter's father fully recovered from his injuries a few months later. Isaiah was driving his Toyota 4Runner and was waiting in a center turn lane when he watched a pickup driver slam into the back of a car that was stopping at a traffic signal. Isaiah stopped and gave a copy of his dashcam footage to the driver of the Hyundai Elantra, who seemed to be okay. He thinks the Toyota Tacoma only needed a new bumper, but that the Hyundai was probably totaled. John was driving his Ford Mustang Mach-E in Huntsville, Alabama. As he approached an intersection on a green light, the woman coming from the right ran her red light. John slammed on the brakes, but he had no chance to stop in time and crashed into the back of the Kia. They filed insurance claims at the scene and the woman took full responsibility. I guess John's dashcam footage would be hard to argue against. The rear bumper cover of the Kia was torn off, and at first the damage to John's Mach-E didn't look too bad. Unfortunately, John later found out that the shop wouldn't be able to fix it for 3 months due to long wait times on replacement parts. The car is undrivable because the forward-facing sensor is now angled to the side, so the car slams on the emergency brakes whenever another car passes it. John's insurance provider gave him a Dodge Ram 1500, pretty much the opposite of an EV. He's thankful he wasn't going any faster and that he has a dash cam. He also recommends that everyone should invest in a quality dash cam. Watch what happened to David after he pulled up to a stop sign. In before someone leaves a comment about David being rammed by a ram. Subscribe if I just stole your joke. The driver of the black pickup claimed she hadn't seen David's Ford Fusion. Thankfully, nobody was injured, and the two parties were able to resolve the incident without involving any first responders. After sending his dashcam footage to her insurance provider, they accepted responsibility and paid $6,800 to fix David's car. They told him that without the video, they would have assigned him 50% of the blame, and he would have had no evidence to prove otherwise. He told us he has dashcams in all his vehicles, just in case. Gary was heading home from class when he noticed an SUV ahead of him slowing down to turn. He could tell the SUV would be out of the way before he got there, so he just kept going. Sadly, a different SUV got in the way instead. When the other SUV pulled out in front of Gary, he panicked and tried to swerve around it, but he couldn't avoid a collision. His Volkswagen Jetta spun completely around before landing in a ditch. After the impact, Gary sat in shock for a while before reaching for his phone and dialing 911. A passing police officer stopped to check on everyone while Gary was checking on the other driver. It turned out the cop was outside his jurisdiction, so he called a South Carolina Highway Patrol officer to assist. All told, Gary was on the side of the road for 2 hours before he was able to get home. The driver of the SUV was uninsured, and his license was suspended as a result of this collision. Sadly, Gary's Jetta was totaled. Chris was headed to get a haircut when the driver of a Nissan Rogue failed to yield and turned across his lane. Chris stood on the brake pedal, but it wasn't enough. When Chris's 1997 Toyota 4Runner slammed into the Rogue SUV, the impact sent the Toyota onto its side and totaled both vehicles. Chris was able to climb out of his car's sunroof with the help of some bikers who witnessed the crash. Both vehicles had to be towed away, and Chris is sad that his 4Runner was wrecked with the odometer fewer than 4,000 miles away from 500,000 miles. When police arrived, they found the Nissan driver at fault. Chris used the insurance settlement to buy a 2005 4Runner, 8 years newer than the last one. Jan was out getting lunch for herself and her husband before he went to work. When the light turned green, she started across the intersection, but she never made it to the other side. Jan told us an 81-year-old man ran his red light, T-boning her Chrysler minivan at 60 miles per hour and sending it 500 feet down the road. First responders arrived quickly, and the driver of the... Wait, what is that? Wow, this has got to be the Honda bump to end all Honda bumps. Anyway, the Honda driver told the police that his light had been green, but they pointed out to him that he'd actually had a green right turn arrow. Jan was taken to the hospital where she received treatment for a head injury. The 81-year-old walked away unharmed. Sadly, Jan's van was totaled. The other driver's insurance provider paid Jan and her husband $12,000 US, and after medical bills and legal fees, they ended up with $5,200, not enough to pay the $6,200 they still owed on the van. Cameron only had 12,000 miles on his 2022 Jeep Gladiator Rubicon EcoDiesel when a teenager driving a Honda failed to yield, turning in front of him and causing a brutal T-bone collision.
Honda bumped!
Cameron said he'd only had the pickup for 6 months when this happened. The insurance claim is still being processed, but he fully expects them to pay off the truck and cover his medical bills based on this footage. Cameron described his Jeep Gladiator as his dream car and told us, "Rip to a real one. We feel you, bro. We're just glad you're okay." This submitter had left his Ford Explorer parked when it captured a driver pull into traffic, then stop in front of another driver who unfortunately was heading directly toward the sun. Evidently, the driver of the SUV had been delivering food when the collision occurred. Our submitter offered the police a copy of his dashcam video, but they told him it was obvious who was responsible. Our submitter told us he thinks both drivers are at fault, and he asked us to shout out Paul and Samantha. Molly was driving her 2011 Audi Q5, which she describes as her dream car, when a Chrysler turned across her lane. Molly was unable to avoid a collision that totaled both vehicles. She still misses her Q5, and even though she replaced it with an Audi A4, she told us it's not the same. She plans to get another Q5 someday. Thankfully, after a year of physical therapy, the pain in her back caused by the accident is gone, but she still gets occasional migraines. Nick was heading to the mall when he watched the driver of a black SUV run a red light and get struck by another SUV. The SUV struck the Toyota's rear tire, spinning it around and sending it dangerously close to Nick's Honda Civic. The SUV then rolled into a red SUV that was stopped on the other side of the intersection. Thankfully, nobody was hurt in the collision. All the involved drivers were thankful for copies of Nick's dashcam footage, but the police told him they'd captured the incident with their own camera on a nearby power pole. They weren't interested in Nick's dashcam footage, but they thanked him for offering it and told him about other incidents where dashcam footage had completely changed the outcome of a collision investigation. Hunter was headed to work one morning while it was both raining and snowing. He admits he should have been driving below the speed limit of 55 miles per hour given the conditions, but he was late on his way to work. As he crested a hill, he saw what looked like headlights in the distance. Only too late did he realize they were actually reverse lights in his lane. And when he swerved to miss the pickup truck, he ran right into its plow. Hunter's Chevy Cruze slid into the snowplow even though he was standing on the brake pedal. The impact totaled his Cruze and destroyed the plow attachment. Hunter called 911 and the road conditions delayed first responders for 15 minutes. Neither of them requested medical attention, but that ended up being a mistake as Hunter had bruised ribs and tinnitus from the collision. Insurance investigators found the pickup driver at fault, and his insurance provider gave Hunter enough money to replace his Chevy Cruze with a used 2021 Nissan Altima a week later. I think we can learn 2 lessons from this story. Slow down when the road is slick, and get checked out by paramedics even if you feel fine in the moment. Ernie was headed to Costco for dog medicine when an oncoming driver ran a red arrow and turned in front of Ernie as he proceeded through a green light. The T-bone impact rolled Ernie's Toyota 4Runner completely over before it ended up back on its wheels. With his doors stuck and windshield shattered, he ended up climbing out through the rear hatch with the help of a bystander. Ernie filed an insurance claim with his dashcam footage as evidence after responding police officers retrieved his dashcam for him. The other driver's insurance provider accepted liability and cut him a check for $40,000 US. Obviously, his 4Runner was totaled, but he used the insurance settlement to replace it with a new one in the same color, along with an improved dashcam with both front and rear angles. Unsurprisingly, the cops told Ernie that the other driver had claimed Ernie had run a red light, and his dashcam footage made all the difference. If you need a dashcam, we put a link to our recommendation in the description. Kenya was heading home from Starbucks when the driver of a blue Hyundai made an illegal U-turn, and Kenya wasn't able to avoid hitting her. The other driver fixed her front bumper cover with tape or bungees or whatever that all is before Kenya was able to take a picture of her car. She then refused to take responsibility for causing the collision. Kenya made a police report and is now waiting for a repair estimate.